Welcome, everyone, to this podcast, part of our series of talks looking into public sector's communication conundrum and how to support staff deliver effective services and improve lives while overcoming technology silos. I'm Mark Blanchard. I'm the Public Sector Director from GovNews, and we've recently partnered with RingCentral to provide some research and surveys into public sector to analyse their adoption of innovations in areas like cloud telephony and cloud communications, as well as improving that omni-channel engagement that public sector can have with its customers, the citizens or the patients, and how it's advancing its use of technology in areas like chatbots or even AI now when it comes to citizen interactions. Over 500 participants completed our research, more than half of which were C-suite senior directors and management level across the entire scope of public sector. And this whole series of talks has been to examine some of the insights and opinions and real world experiences that's coming out of that research. So today's talk is going to focus on PSTN, an acronym for the Public Switched Telephone Network, which denotes the conventional telephone infrastructure, primarily designed for voice-centric communications, but encompasses a network of interlinked carriers, ensuring a dependable connection amongst individuals using standard telephone lines. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by two guest panelists. We have Nigel Linge, Professor of Telecommunications, University of Salford. Nigel, great to talk to you and to have you here.
Thank you, Mark. Nice to see you.
So Nigel, I believe, has extensive experience of working in the field of telecommunications, which includes academic research, teaching, and collaborative projects across the industry. He's a fellow of the Institute of Telecommunication Professionals and chairs their editorial board for the journal, and has also had an extensive outreach profile, which involves delivering public lectures and engaging with the media. So great to have you with us, Nigel. Looking forward to talking to you. Accompanying Nigel, we have Theo Blackwell MBE and Chief Digital Officer for London. Great to have you with us, Theo.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here.
So I believe you were appointed London's first CDO in 2017 and now leads on a London-wide digital transformation, data and smart cities initiative for City Hall. You are involved in, naturally, the strategic leadership on digital transformation and its agenda for public sector across London, as well as the LGA group in the wider public sector, and convening on behalf of the mayor across London local government. I believe you work to support the take-up of innovation, technology, data-led approaches to service delivery and public engagement. So I'm sure you've got a lot to add in this podcast. I'm looking forward to, what you've got to say. So a very warm welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start. Okay, if any, what are the key objectives and goals for the PSTN switch off? Nigel, where do we start?
Well, the PSTN is 1980s technology. It was introduced from mid-1980s onwards. You could say it served us amazingly well, but it's now life expired and is in urgent need of replacements, not only from a reliability point of view, but it's also quite energy hungry as well. There are more energy efficient solutions. I noted that Ofcom, the regulator, who published their Connected Nations report, the most recent report was published in December 2023. They're reporting that last year there was a 20% increase in reported faults on the PSTN and a 60% increase in the number of PSTN service hours lost. So you could say it's starting to crumble, and there's concern about the long-term reliability of the service. Hence, it needs to upgrade, and the telephone network has upgraded ever since it was ever created. So this is an industry-led strategy. It's all telecommunications providers are saying it is now time to upgrade the PSTN. And I think it's important to stress that the landline telephone is not being discontinued. We still have landline services, still continue with telephone numbers, but the technology that provides it has to be upgraded. So there's an incentive here, a necessity to get this sorted from a technical point of view. So this is very much an industry-led initiative. And the UK is not alone. All countries around the world are doing this. Some are ahead, some are behind. So this is happening everywhere at the moment.
So Theo, industry-led initiative, is it a surprise then there isn't a pan-public sector strategy led by government on the PSTN switch off in terms of what public sector should do?
Yeah, the phrase industry-led is quite problematic. I agree with everything Nigel's just said about the necessity of upgrades to telecommunications infrastructure. They happen, since the invention of the telephone onwards. The government itself has repeated this mantra of industry-led and really used it as justification to not have any oversight about what's actually going on. So the industry regulator, Ofcom, has played very little role in giving oversight or steer to the possible impacts of copper switch off in the UK, or really an assessment about if you're going to change your fundamental infrastructure, aging as it is, who's going to be impacted most? Are there any particular groups of people? And we're finding out that there are, or particular types of organisation. And from my perspective, dealing with councils, we're certainly finding that they are. So industry-led has been used as a way for government to kind of step away from any kind of responsibility about the operational aspects of this, when it could have seen this as a really important strategic opportunity to modernise a technology base with all sorts of benefits, which we can turn to later on in the conversation.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of those specific challenges, if we may, that either public sector are only just starting to identify or they anticipate in implementing the migration, and any kind of advice that our panelists can offer in terms of how to address those challenges. Theo, you said that obviously you're speaking quite intensely with your local authorities across London. Does that mean that each of them have got a very unique strategy, or have collectively you managed to bring those together to say, look, these are the challenges, this is a roadmap, this is how we can work together to do it?
Yeah, so across the public sector, whether it's councils or fire brigade, police services, ambulance, etc., they've all had plans with a greater or lesser degree of maturity since this was announced. Certainly, when we talk to colleagues at Transport for London, a very, very comprehensive plan on PSTN switch off. However, when you start looking at local councils, I think for the two issues that come up. One is that of all organisations in the United Kingdom, the local council is the one that provides the most services to people. It provides housing, it provides telecare, and of course has a duty to safeguard people who are vulnerable. So we're seeing two issues emerge from this. One is large numbers of people who are telecare users who are impacted by this, an incredibly complex environment which their kit needs to be replaced at home. So in London alone, we estimate that there are at least 63,000 people who live at home who have telecare devices that need to be upgraded by someone effectively going along, contacting them, entering their home, replacing their kit in most circumstances. There are many, many points of failure in doing that. So the particular sort of user group that needs to change, that needs these changes, is complex, and the way in which you do it is very, very complex. Local authorities also provide housing, which is also impacted by copper switch off. So that could be door entry systems, lift alarms, lifts, plant machinery, other things, a whole host of things. So local councils at the moment have to understand the assets, the technology assets behind that stock, have to get engineers along to understand what is needed and then take action on that. That has proven, in reality, rather than on a paper plan, a much more complex task than originally anticipated. And of course, there's no kind of covering cost for a local authority to do so. They need to do so in order to provide a good service. So, on the other hand, we've got an aging technology in the telecommunications sector, which is costing them a lot of money. So the saving goes to the telecommunications industry. The cost is borne by the council and the council taxpayer. That's that's how it's playing out at the moment.
Right. Nigel, any other specific challenges you can think of that?
Well, Theo's given us quite a list there, hasn't he? I think the challenge is that we don't normally know what's plugged into the telephone network. It's been around for so long and equipment has evolved over time that fundamentally an organization needs to do a thorough audit to say, what have we got plugged into the network? Because potentially some of that equipment could be problematic. Others might be straightforward. But if you don't know what's actually plugged in, you don't know where the problems will emerge if you're not careful. So you've got to do an audit of your systems, and that has to include everything Theo said, including also if there are any fax machines lurking in cupboards anywhere. Those are issues that have to be looked at. Also, we talk about the PSTN, but that hand in hand, the Integrated Services Digital Network, ISDN, is also changing. So if an organization thinks, oh, we're okay, we have a local telephone system in our building, but it's on an ISDN line, that's not PSTN, we're okay. Oh, no, you're not. That has to be looked at as well. So that's from the organization's point of view. But as a public sector organization, the other side of it is the customers, the public. And when we talk about telecare, there's the telecare provider who offers the service and the call center. But actually, the bigger challenge is the domestic customer in their home. So we've got to worry about how easy it is if you transition a public sector organization as an organization and say all of our systems are fine. Okay, but what about the people who are trying to contact you? Are they okay? And so it's a double edge here. We have to worry about the users in the homes as well as the organizational aspects.
Yeah, because I think initially, obviously, a lot of organisations just focused on, okay, we'll migrate and we'll go to cloud telephony. Our telephone numbers will stay the same.
Exactly.
So people will still be able to contact us, but through cloud telephony, we can integrate into Microsoft Teams. We can improve our kind of smarter ways of working and modern working models, and perhaps fail to actually think about all the other connections and plugins that they're going to need to consider, which if they're looking after housing stock and housing and buildings with the lift systems as well. Probably just an area they've not forgotten, but will cause a problem. Fax machines, you've mentioned one, pages in hospitals.
Your pages,
is another area.
Basically, it's not just phones. That's the key thing. It's not just the phone. Anything that's plugged into the telephone network is of concern. As I say, some of it may be trivial, but if you don't examine it and check it, you don't know.
Okay. So, Nigel, could you provide maybe some insights into the journey that's led to this decision to switch off here in the UK? What the need to modernise. I remember, Theo, many years ago when I was talking to local authorities about IT, digital transformation and modernisation, and all they could talk about was channel shift. But what were the driving factors and key milestones in the process of PSTN switch off?
Okay, well, the target is that the whole country will be fully switched over by the 31st of December 2025. So we've got just short of 2 years to that deadline. Now, that is because primarily, as I said at the beginning, the PSTN is life expired. It's beginning to creak quite heavily, and there's concern about its long-term reliability, as well as the cost of keeping it running from an energy point of view. You can't buy the spares anymore, all these sorts of issues. So those are the main drivers from the telecommunications industry. Of course, we're also seeing a decline in the usage of what we call the traditional telephone PSTN service and a migration into internet-based technologies. So there is, if you like, a trend line that says actually we're all moving towards cloud and internet type applications. So why not go with that and say keeping the PSTN going when there is that transition doesn't make a lot of sense. The problem is the people that haven't transitioned are often the difficult ones that rely on the PSTN. Any customer who doesn't have a broadband connection, and I've seen various estimates, including 1 in 20 households in the UK have a landline telephone, but they don't have a broadband service. So difficult to switch over when you're switching from PSTN to broadband if you haven't got broadband. So there are a lot of challenges around there, but the plan is that all providers will have transitioned the network by the end of December 2025. But this is not going to be a big bang. This can be done piecemeal. Some customers will have already done it in a particular area and others won't have been. There are, from the telecoms companies, some strategies in place which are saying we're going to target a particular area of the country and really blitz it with a media campaign and so on to try and get everyone in that area moved over. But that, again, is individual telecoms companies with their own approach. There's no national strategy here, no national timetable other than trying to get everything done by that date that I've mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
this is
sorry.
this is exactly what I mean by the government kind of just almost taking a just the lightest possible touch to this, and by repeating that it's industry led, government didn't see itself as having any role in oversight, any role in setting a steer or direction to the telecoms industry and setting expectations, especially around the impacts on telecare users. And I just, for the life of me, I cannot understand how a government minister in Whitehall can consider this issue when it's very, very clear that the vast majority of telecare users are reliant on this old technology. Why they didn't set in train the kind of requirements which they have now put in place, because there's been a fuss as of December 2023.
Yeah. Will it be a case that this will get followed up now, though, with incentives, support packages and programs by government, because the time is ticking? We're getting closer and closer to that deadline. Yes, there's been no strategy and there's been no plan, or is that organisations wishful thinking? Is it wishful thinking?
I can't see. Local government.
Because it's just happened in the NHS for GP practices. They've just been given a pot of money based on, well, let's avoid that 8 a.m. rush to your GP appointment.
Certainly, according to our calculations, and we commissioned Greater London Authority Economics, which is the research arm of City Hall, to do some modelling on the cost impact on local authorities. So the main chunks of cost are adult social care and essentially housing services and broader estate. One authority came back with the sum of a cost of between 7 and 8 million. That was an authority with a very large amount of social housing in central London. 50% of the costs, just over 50% of the costs, were in the housing housing services. The rest of them were in adult social care. So if you just take it, if you just say, look, they're going to spend £3.5 million on adult social care, by extra on adult social care by in the next 18 months, that takes a good chunk out of the adult social care precept that taxpayers pay every year to support adult social care. So that means that a squeeze is happening extra because of this change. And I don't again, I think it's been a sort of a total dereliction of duty by government not to foresee this happening, and also not to work to make this, in a sense, a bit more of a modernisation opportunity by seeing earlier investment in this could mean that we have something that is genuinely really beneficial with this upgrade. The government talks a lot about the integration of health and adult social care. It certainly has been for the lifespan of the PSTN switch off from 2017. They're talking about virtual wards in the NHS. They're spending money on that. Why could they not think, okay, here's an investment fund opportunity for councils to upgrade personal telecare and link it to the local NHS? That would be an exciting market making opportunity, which you could also introduce things like standards, and you could think about data exchange and create
Compliance.
new service models, and all of the things that public service modernization is talking about, as opposed to just going, oh, it's just an industry-led telecom switch off, nothing to do with me. That's been the kind of policy shocker about this.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
just to pick up on what Theo said there, I agree. It was, I just looked at the websites and so on. On the 18th of December, actually, just gone, the government and industry published a charter for PSTN switch off, where effectively the telcos have committed to not switch over customers of certain categories, not forcibly switch them over. So it's only now that back in December, just literally a month ago, that charter was agreed, and obviously Ofcom have set some minimum standards, but again, that is talking about things like battery backup in case of power fail in homes and minimum standards of that. But the charter goes further than that. But again, it's only just come out. So there were opportunities there to as you say, do more adventurous, future-looking things.
Because there were newspaper articles
absolutely.
about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, it's reactive. It's not strategic.
No, that's right.
It's the fear of bad newspaper reports. If a coroner's inquest says someone fell and they were never found because their telephone network didn't work, that is effectively what's driving it, which is kind of like a really sad state of affairs for something that people have known about for a long time.
Okay. Our research into this whole subject identified, in fact, I was talking to Nigel before this podcast very briefly, but it actually showed over 50% of public sector organisations have already migrated their own work business telephony from copper to digital, and many of which have acknowledged they're reaping the benefits in terms of creating new and smarter and modern working practices because of that. Integration into MS Teams, creating automations, chatbots, AI. So it's really creating, I suppose, going back to what I mentioned earlier, that kind of channel shift that public sector organisations want to do. They want to be digital by default, ideally. But that doesn't tick that, obviously, box for the vulnerable or the things that we've talked about here. What I want to talk about is the advice that you can potentially offer to public sector organisations that are listening to this for the first time. They know about PSTN switch off, or they're actually more concerning, just looking at it now for the first time. What kind of advice or guidance would you offer them? Where to start? What to focus on? We've talked about creating that audit. Nigel, is that something that you could maybe suggest any more on?
Very much so. And again, I think it is important to recognise that there are benefits to this switch over. I tend to avoid the word switch off these days because it implies landlines are going. They're not going, they're changing. So it's a switch over of technology.
The numbers are going to stay the same.
You keep your no telephone number is going to be lost. You can still have a corded telephone in the home if you want one. The telephone service will run. it will be different technologically. So there are some benefits, there are some real user benefits of this upgrade. It's not just a case of, oh, the PSTN is on its last legs, we just replace it like for like. No, there will be new opportunities with the system. And I think what we've been saying is maybe there's been some opportunities missed there as a country as to how we could have exploited this even more so than has been done. So an organization that's moved across has probably already seen some of the benefits that will come from it in terms of the services they can offer within the organization. But you have to do that audit. You have to know what in your organization is plugged into the PSTN. And then there is some help available. So I would direct people to Tech UK. Tech UK are producing a series of briefing papers. They've got, I think, 3 at the moment. There's one on telecare, one on business, one for members of parliament. There's one coming out shortly covering local authorities, I understand. There's also a generic website called Future of Voice, which is intended to be a one-stop shop for people to go to get further advice about what's involved. Although I do believe from Tech UK that website is going to go through a change shortly, but no doubt you'll be redirected to the new site anyway. And then Ofcom, the regulator, also has on its website guidance about changing systems across from existing telephone service to the new broadband system. For telecare, and there's a big issue with telecare, that really is a huge, huge issue that's occupying not only London, every local authority. I was in a meeting with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority yesterday. Big issue in Manchester, Greater Manchester, big issue everywhere. So telecare, for telecare specifically, the industry has set up 5 test centres across the UK where telecare providers can take equipment and have it checked to make sure it will work on a broadband-based voice over IP telephony. So there are various things in place. Also for domestic customers, the telecoms companies are now starting to offer what they call hybrid product, which is telephones with mobile backup. So if your landline goes down, that same phone switches across to mobile to maintain a landline telephone service. So there are various products starting to emerge now, which are there to try and not only assist the transition, but also to mitigate some of the big differences between PSTN and broadband telephony, one of which gets a lot of press is power fail. At the moment, an old-fashioned PSTN telephone, I don't mean a cordless telephone, a corded phone that you plug in the wall, is powered from the telephone exchange. It won't be in the new system. So you have to have a local battery backup solution if you lose the landline service. So there are products now starting to emerge to try and mitigate some of these issues. But in terms of advice, then I would strongly advise people to go to Tech UK and Ofcom, where there are now some useful guidance notes being produced.
So Theo, public sector organisations across the UK, local government, central government, Blue Light and Justice, further and higher ed, healthcare, they're going to be watching this podcast. As a chief digital officer for London, what advice, depending on their smarter working maturity journey and whether they've transitions migrated as yet or not, what advice would you offer them?
I think most organisations will have a roadmap. And if I was service director in one of those organisations or chief executive or leader of a council, I would want to assure myself that the roadmap that was put in front of me, 2 years ago, is dealing with the complexity that others have found as they've gone on the journey down there. So don't assume that it's all straightforward, because in practice, this is proven far more complex in delivery than anticipated. So, in a sense, revisit your roadmap is what I'd say. There are two, I think, I used to be a local government councillor, so sort of speaking from a kind of inner councillor, just getting my inner councillor out there, I would say the thing that is top of the risk register for local councils, and they're therefore dealing with first, is adult social care and telephony. The big challenge with that, as I alluded to before, is data sharing. How do you match the kind of telephone numbers of from all of the service providers, and there are hundreds of them, with people in areas that are about to be switched off? That is a complex data sharing arrangement, which requires a data sharing agreement. BT have come up with a template one, but they designed it without local government. So there are resources you can go to. You can talk to the LGA. And certainly in London, what we've been doing is trying to develop an alternative data sharing framework, one that is acceptable both to the telecommunications industry and the council, so we can get to this problem of matching who gets the service and where they live as easily as possible, so we can get it fixed, so people can get telecommunication, the new services in their homes that work. I'm really glad to see that the industry is doing these test centres. We're going to have one in London too, so that kit can be tested before it goes in someone's home, rather than put in someone's home, then you find out it doesn't quite work. So, as I say, top of the list is adult social care, and top of the adult social care challenge is essentially a very, very complex and difficult data arrangement that needs to be sorted first. Secondly, housing. Local authorities will be casting about for engineers to survey their estate and their housing blocks. I think on a regional level, authorities collaborating with one another, so getting the same skilled engineers to go out and do bigger load of jobs is the right thing to do. You want to have skilled people going into those blocks and understanding what the problem is before it's too late. So I think a bit of pooling there. So these are all the things that we're trying to put in place in London. We have an organisation called London Office of Technology and Innovation that basically Lottie, that brings together the councils. We have effectively regular meetings. I mean, we're base camp on Google on this, share information all the time. So there are opportunities to work together. And I think the final point I'd make is, don't do this alone. In your own service department, don't think it's your own small challenge that no one else is facing. All other service departments in your field are facing the same one, and it also impacts right across your council. So having those conversations with others about how you're resolving problems, whether they're a data problem or there's an audit problem, there are those conversations happening right across the country. So being able to talk to other people to find the right way through is somewhere in the country, someone somewhere in the country has resolved the problem that you're facing. So I think we'll definitely get through this, but we're collaboration is the key.
Well, I want to talk to you about collaboration. There are framework agreements, that Crown Commercial Service and other professional buying organisations have with frameworks for the cloud telephony. But has there been a real opportunity missed in terms of a collaborative procurement that they could have done, like you say, in maybe the London councils coming together, collaboratively procuring a solution that was fit for all?
Yeah, but that's not how the government sees local government. That's why it was never thought of in this upgrade. Without a doubt. There was a huge opportunity to sort of smartify housing estates, people's homes, and make it for telecare users huge opportunity, and also disrupt the industry. You talk to people who commission these services and deal with the so-called connection providers and the telecare providers. They're not particularly happy customers with the products that they already receive. They want that industry, like many others providing services to UK government and local government. They're just all these verticals that are just carved up by dominant players, providing the same kind of services to people. Where's the innovation here? Where's the thing that allows us to take the next stage into independent living or smart housing and smart places? We, as a country, do not look at these things strategically. It's very, very apparent, and there's an absence of that kind of thinking at government level, and has been for quite a long time.
Nigel, do you fear because of the deadline we've missed that opportunity to innovate in this area, or do you think there's still a art of a possible?
Well, I think Theo makes a very valid point. I think there is an opportunity missed here to have actually seen this not just as we've got to switch over the technology from A to B, but actually now what can we do, and can we innovate, as you've just said? So I think there is an opportunity missed, but obviously that opportunity can still be realised, perhaps not as efficiently maybe, but the new technology will still enable what Theo is talking about. I just feel that we could perhaps have done it better, because we could have got in there early and made sure it was designed from the bottom up to do what we wanted to do. So I think that's the opportunity missed. The technology will have the capabilities that we want, but we might end up having to spend the money twice instead of once in order to do that, unfortunately. Just in terms of guiding people to further advice, we've talked a lot about telecare, which is a huge issue. The Department of Health and Social Care have produced a telecare stakeholder action plan document, which is on the government website. So anybody in the telecare sector or involved with that should look at the Department of Health and Social Care telecare stakeholder action plan. It was published in December 2022. That contains the details of the 5 test centres that I mentioned, all of which, just looking at the list, are in England, not in Wales, and not in Scotland, by the way. So that's
our
one
readers
document.
And watchers cover the whole of the UK, so maybe we need
yes,
to
I know.
cover
That's
this
why I
topic
mentioned
in a devolved environment, perhaps.
Yeah,
but,
they are.
These the government has produced guidance, but it's very government guidance-y sort of thing. It's there's useful context and explainers, but when it comes down to the practical side of doing this, it's not a question that Whitehall can answer.
No, absolutely.
It's a question that we are playing back to them as we experience it in people's homes and on housing estates.
Absolutely.
Nigel,
right.
Theo, I'm sure we could have actually carried on this discussion much longer, but I'm sad to say that that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been really fascinating, actually.
Thanks,
and I don't think it's going to be useful to our listeners to have heard this and start to maybe think about it in areas that they might not have previously considered. But I think there's definitely some lessons learned from this, and hopefully we can get there. But I'm Mark Blanchard of GovNews, and I'd like to thank everyone for listening today. And thank you very much, Nigel and Theo, for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.